Hey, it's Meg. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making some DIY stamped labels for Junk Journal July Day 4. The prompt is label, and the lovely Kaylee over at Kaylee Gray, I don't know why I said over at when she's just Kaylee Gray, she's doing the collaboration for today. So I'll leave the playlist link down below if you want to follow along with that. So I had some packaging strips, as you can see. I just pulled them off something that I had bought, and as you do, I thought, well, I've got to save those because they're craft and they are quite thick actually. So I thought, well, I'll save them for something and eventually use them. And today's the day. I thought, well, they're perfect for making into labels. And it just so happened that the label stamp that I have here was the perfect size to stamp onto this. Now, I love when that happens, when it just matches up so perfectly, and so I was able to just use a sepia ink stamp to create the outline for these labels. Now, if you don't have a specific stamp like this, you can of course DIY your own stamp with some foam or some cardboard, or you could even just grab a pen and draw like the outline of a label. And the fun thing about that is that then you could make that whatever shape you want. You could do circles rather than rectangles that I'm doing here. You could do squares, you could play around with the different corners, but this is just a fun way to upcycle some packaging and turn them into labels that I can then use in my junk journals. So it's a bit of mass making, I suppose, because you could make like a ton of labels all at once with different colors. You could use different papers. The possibilities are literally endless with something like this. So I just started off with the first one, doing a plain set of labels, and I really liked these, but as I was cutting them out, they kind of reminded me of the faux washi that I love to make. It's something that Rachel over at Roxy Creations came up with to do the collage on these strips. And I thought, well, what if I apply the same technique and then do my stamping to turn them into labels? So I started off with a white acrylic pen here, as you can see, just adding some dots, and I really like the contrast that that has against the craft paper. And I'm not sure why I decided to do this first when I then came in with collage, but there we go, working a little bit backwards here, I suppose. So I grabbed some papers. I have some tea dyed and also the end papers of books where you don't have the text on them, and just decided to start building up a neutral base for the stamping to go on top of. So I kept it fairly simple. Like, I didn't want to go too all out and have loads of detail on these, because then you wouldn't be able to see the stamp very clearly that I've used. So I wanted it to be a balance where I had enough interest and texture on these little labels, but not so much so that it was super overwhelming for the label itself. So I just added a few pieces in different sections and layered them up. I think I even added a bit of tracing paper. Yes, I added some tracing paper as well. Not that you can see it really obviously, but it just adds a little bit of ghosting and interest onto the labels themselves. love how these little textured scrappy labels came together. I think they are the perfect little addition to any of my junk journal pages. It's really nice to have something like this where you've got it ready to go. So I've got my page here. It's the cream envelope page from the previous day's prompt, where I used the flap of the envelope on one side, and now we've got this cream page. And I actually think it breaks up the patchwork page quite nicely and gives some breathing space. So I really wanted to lean into that negative space. So I created a collage cluster that had the label at the center and almost did it a bit like an envelope too, like how you would concentrate on the middle and you'd have that space to write the address. And I really liked the layout of this because it was a lot more simple and felt like it just bridged that gap nicely into the following pages. And so, because I had the constraints of the envelope already, I just sort of worked into that. So even though I'm going with a sort of blended effect between a lot of the pages, this was quite a nice way to create that was a bit more contained, and I was just able to create this little collage. So say if I already had the label created, it's a really easy way to create a quick page and to not have to think about it too much because it's ready to go. So I layered some collage papers underneath. I think I had like a doily and some other bits and pieces, and so kept it very neutral because even the doily, it doesn't stand out that much. You can see it more in person because the contrast between the white and the cream is a lot more subtle, but I think that's what adds a nice delicate element almost to this page and helps it to not be so overwhelming. And so I also wanted to add some florals, obviously. So I decided to add some of these MU ribbons, and they are some white florals. And I just thought that that was the perfect way to complement the colour scheme that I had going on here without detracting, because I really did want the label to be the focal point. And I think if I'd have added a coloured flower of any description, whether it was like a cutout one or a cluster of these ribbons, I think that that would have then drawn your eye to that being the focal point. And I really wanted the focus to be on the label, as I say, because that's the focus for the prompt of label. And so I'm just tucking a few of the like foliage leaf type ribbons here underneath on the opposite side, just to add a little bit of balance and have some interest down there as well, because I didn't want it to be too top heavy with the flower on the top there. But as I said, I didn't want to deviate too far from the center that I had, so I had that breathing space and that negative space as well. But I felt like something was missing, so I did actually add a little bit of music sheet paper under there. I just tucked it under the label, and I think having something that had the black ink on it just gave a little bit of needed contrast to the page, so things didn't feel like they were blending in together too much, and it helped to lift the label off the envelope. And sticking with the colour scheme that I did have going on with this page, I wanted to add some washi tape, so I actually used just a grey and white like grid, really basic tape onto this page, and it just added a nice finishing touch there to the bottom of this collage. And I added some dots and some little scribbles here with the same coloured pencil that I used for yesterday's stenciling. And again, you can't really see this on camera, it doesn't really pick up, but in person it's just a nice little hint of details. And even though this envelope was like a lift up page, I actually decided to just staple the entire page down on the bottom there, and it created a little bit of a tuck spot. So that was just another fun way to improvise with the page that I already had going on here, and seeing how I could create different things with the bits that I'd put in from the previous day, because I don't always have a plan of what I'm going to do with them. And after some final scribbling with a white pencil that you really couldn't even see in person, that is the finished page for the prompt of labels. So I hope you enjoyed journaling along with me. Don't forget to check out the collaboration, and I'll see you in the next one.